He walked into the ballroom with money, power, and a name that could silence any room. But none of that mattered when his young disabled son stepped forward, unnoticed, unseen, until a black waitress did something no one else dared. She gave the boy a chance to lead, a dance step that would shatter a billionaire's pride and expose a truth he never wanted to face. What happened in that single moment didn't just change a father. It raised a question about dignity, prejudice, and the meaning of love. Are you ready to see how one small act can rewrite an entire life? For Richard Hale, life was measured in control. A billionaire investor, he lived in a world where money bent rules and respect was bought, not earned. His days were filled with meetings in glass towers, his nights with exclusive events where status mattered more than sincerity. To the world, he was untouchable. Yet behind the polished image, there was one part of his life he couldn't shape, with power. His son, Daniel. Born with a disability that left him struggling to walk, Daniel lived in the shadows of his father's expectations, carried from event to event like an ornament rather than a child. That evening, Richard brought Daniel to a charity gala, another room of bright chandeliers and shallow smiles. For Richard, it was business as usual, a stage to display wealth, shake hands, and prove dominance. For Daniel, it was another reminder that he didn't belong, tucked away quietly at the edge of the dance floor. But then, something happened. A pair of eyes noticed what no one else dared to see. A simple act of kindness, quiet, almost invisible, was about to pierce through Richard's carefully built world. And it would come from someone he never expected. The gala buzzed with polished laughter, crystal glasses clinking, and the orchestra swelling with every note. For Richard Hale, it was another stage to command. But for Daniel, it was a room that reminded him of everything he could not do. Guests floated across the floor in elegant steps, while he sat quietly, his wheelchair tucked against the wall. Eyes slid past him as though he wasn't even there. And that's when she appeared. A young black waitress, weaving through the crowd with trays heavier than they should have been, her posture straight, despite the dismissive looks cast her way. To the powerful men and women in the room, she was invisible, someone to serve, not to notice. But she noticed Daniel. She saw the way his hands tapped nervously to the music, the way his eyes lingered on the dancers with a longing no one else cared to see. Her steps slowed when she passed him. Just for a moment she smiled. It was the kind of smile that said, "I see you." No one else had given him that gift all night, but her kindness didn't go unnoticed by others. A group of sharply dressed guests exchanged glances, their whispers sharp as knives. "Inappropriate," one muttered. "She should know her place," another scoffed. And then, with mocking laughter, someone added, "Imagine her trying to dance here. With him." Daniel heard it. Richard didn't. His father was too busy shaking hands, too blinded by reputation to see the storm brewing around his son. But Daniel's heart sank. The boy who had been silent all evening suddenly wanted to disappear altogether. The waitress didn't back down. She bent down, set her tray aside, and whispered encouragement with her eyes alone. Slowly, she extended her hand toward Daniel, not as a server, not out of pity, but as if inviting him to be what everyone else had denied him, a boy who deserved to be seen. Gasps rippled through the room. Conversations froze. Every eye turned. A billionaire's disabled son, and a black waitress daring to cross a line no one else would. The orchestra kept playing, but the silence in the room screamed louder. Daniel's small hand trembled as it reached for hers. For a split second, the entire ballroom held its breath. Would he take it? Would Richard notice? Would the unspoken rules of wealth and prejudice crush this fragile moment before it began? The floor seemed to tilt as Daniel's fingers finally brushed hers, and in that instant, The weight of the room, the whispers, the stares, the judgment, shifted onto one fragile dance step, because what happened next wouldn't just test a child's courage, it would expose a father's soul. The ballroom erupted in whispers as Daniel's trembling hand finally rested in hers. For a heartbeat, it was beautiful, an innocent boy given the chance to be seen. But then came the eruption. A wealthy guest, red with anger, slammed his glass onto the table. "This is a disgrace," he barked. Others chimed in, their words dripping with venom. "A waitress? Touching him? Have you lost your mind?" Daniel froze. The joy on his face faltered, his small frame shrinking as if he wished he could disappear into the polished floor. The waitress stood her ground, her hand steady, her gaze unshaken, even as eyes cut through her like blades. And then Richard saw it. He turned, his face tightening as he realized the entire gala was watching. Not him, not his empire, but his son, vulnerable and exposed beside a black woman who dared to show him kindness. The billionaire's pride collided with centuries of prejudice in that single moment. He could hear the unspoken judgment. Control your boy, silence this woman, protect your name, but Daniel's other hand clutched tighter to hers. And then, against all odds, he moved. His foot dragged forward, shaky and uncertain, but it was a step. The orchestra's rhythm wrapped around him. For the first time, Daniel wasn't a silent ornament. He was leading. The room split in two. Some gasped in horror, others whispered in awe. But no one dared to stop it. Richard's chest pounded, his carefully built empire, his pride, his prejudice, all trembling on the edge of collapse. This wasn't just a dance. It was a reckoning. Because in that fragile step, his son had done what Richard never could, challenge a world that measured worth by power and skin, and in that moment Richard had to choose, silence the truth or let it shatter him. The music played on, but the room would never forget what it had witnessed. Daniel's shaky step became 2, then 3. The waitress guided him with grace, her courage burning brighter than the chandeliers above. And for the first time, Richard didn't see weakness in his son. He saw strength, a strength he had overlooked, dismissed, buried beneath his own pride. Silence clung to the crowd, heavy with discomfort. Some averted their eyes, unwilling to confront what the moment revealed. That dignity knows no wealth, and courage wears no skin color. Others whispered, their voices tinged with shame, realizing they had just witnessed truth emerge from a child and a woman they had deemed invisible. For Richard, the decision came like a breaking wave. He didn't silence it. He didn't stop it. Instead, he stepped back, not as a man of power, but as a father who finally understood what love meant. That night, in a room of prejudice, it wasn't money or influence that rewrote his life. It was a dance step, led by a boy the world underestimated and a woman the world tried to erase. And that's the deeper truth, isn't it? Racism doesn't always scream. It whispers in who we ignore, in whose courage we dismiss, in whose humanity we choose not to see. But sometimes, one act of defiance, one moment of unexpected kindness, rips the silence wide open. So the question lingers for all of us. When the moment comes to choose between silence and justice, between prejudice and love, what step will you take?